After 10 years of great effort and a lot of hard work, Patricia and Alirio, who lived in Florida, they were one night all of a sudden deported, separated from their family, and left their two sons here. After 20 years of living here, Sandra Juanita and Manuel have been working hard as well and are very hardworking and have a lot of things going on. And they're working hard to get their children move forward, to give them education. So, but they live with an excruciating fear and pain every day, worrying that they might not be here tomorrow. Stories like these repeat all along the US, and they are like around 11 million stories like these. That's the number of undocumented immigrants that we have in the country. So, how do we, as immigrants, do we have this effort and this strength to go above and beyond that fear of that excruciating pain of not knowing if we're going to be here tomorrow or not? What makes us go above and beyond, work, study, and contribute to society without having that pain controlling us? So I was thinking the other day, like, what makes us move forward? Like, how do we not like stop here and just renounce to everything? So I think that we have something called the immigrant factor. So I think that immigrant factor is what allows parents, fathers to come here, work 16, 15 hours under the sun, doing farming, doing gardening, or mothers to go on their knees and start cleaning houses and start working hard without caring about the pain, just caring about what their daughters and sons are going to have, caring about what they will have, and caring about their food, what they're going to have in their future, just caring about their quality of life. So when we get here to the country, I think that the immigrant factor is one of our unique assets. And by this, I mean that the immigrant factor is something that we have that is supremely valuable and that will allow us to move forward and to not care about the situation, but go on and contribute to society and work for our family. So what exactly is it? I gave you some example. I gave you what immigrant factor can help us do, but I think the perfect word that summarizes the immigrant factor is ganas. And ganas is a Spanish word that, if we translate it to English, is desire. But I think that desire doesn't correctly translate what we mean when we say ganas. And I think that ganas is that fire, that passion we have inside of us to move forward and to go in pursuit of our goals and pursuit of something that we have on our minds. Going back to the couples we had in the beginning, Patricia and Alirio, when they were in the United States, they used to work in houses, work in gardens and farming, and also as an extra work, they worked at a private school to give their son the opportunity to study there because they believed he had a great future and they wanted the best for him. Sandra Juanita and Manuel told their three sons, looking at their eyes, that they were going to pay for their college tuition, even though they didn't have access to financial aid or to any other resources than their immigrant factor, then their work, and then that. Immigrant factor is what let Diana Trujillo arrive to the US with only $300 and lead the Jet Propulsion Laboratory to take Perseverance to Mars this year. The immigrant factor is what allowed Hugo Caicedo to come to the US to do his PhD in biotechnology without knowing anything about English. And today, he is one of the most known names in biotechnology and pharmaceuticals in the US, being recognized by Harvard and MIT. The immigrant factor is what allowed Dr. Philip Lam to escape the Vietnam War when he was just a child and leave his mother and come here by himself to become one of the most recognized physicians in the US and lives today in Illinois. So why am I telling you this? Why am I bringing this up? Why is this important? I've been talking with a lot of friends, peers, and many times they say that being an immigrant is a disadvantage. But I disagree a lot with that. I think that being an immigrant is a huge advantage. especially because we have that asset of the immigrant factor. We have those skills that will allow us to go above and beyond. I think that the immigrant factor as an asset, even though we have to give an extra mile, even though we have an extra effort, that extra effort is always translated as extra quality, as something that you can't see in other people. You can't see that normally. That's just something that is really unique to us. One of the best things that happened to me during the pandemic was being able to watch Hamilton for the first time through Disney Plus, and I think Hamilton portrays very well the story of Alexander Hamilton as an immigrant. And one of the songs that Lin-Manuel Miranda wrote, "My Shot," where he says the famous sentence, "I'm not throwing away my shot," that is the sentence that each immigrant has when we arrive here. We do not want to throw away our shot. We want to take advantage of it, and we just grab it and we just stay and stick with it until we could just get our goal. I think our immigrant factor gives us multiple skills to not throw away our shot. And many times those skills are even seen in industry. For example, stress management. Wouldn't you agree with me that all immigrants have this skill of stress management when they came here or we came here and we didn't know anything about the country, we didn't know anybody, and we had to adapt to the system just by ourselves? Or wouldn't you agree with me that we have communication skills when we translated when we were 7, 8, 9 years old to our parents when they didn't know or they haven't learned English still? Wouldn't you agree with me that we have amazing problem solving skills when we resolved by ourselves how FAFSA worked, how financial aid worked, or if we didn't even have the opportunity of get FAFSA and we figured out how to finance our school by ourselves as well? Wouldn't you agree with me that we have leadership skills? Being for example, a first-gen student, being the first one to figure out how to get to the school and getting to do that by yourself, that is also an amazing skill. As immigrants, we have a lot of power and we have an asset that we can use. And if you're an immigrant, take advantage of it, embrace it, and use it for your favor because it's something that not everybody has. And if you're not an immigrant, look at what we are bringing to the table. We can have a lot of opportunity there and we can work together to make stuff even much more better. Hamilton portrays a lot of this that I discussed in many ways, but this is one of the scenes I most like. Is before the Battle of Yorktown. Lafayette and Hamilton are having a talk, a chat, and they say a sentence that I think best concludes this presentation. And that sentence is, "Immigrants, we get the job done." So that is my idea about the immigrant factor. My name is Nicolas Valencia, and thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me to speak with you today. The title of my talk is "Why I Saluted the Brown Truck." Why I saluted the brown truck. It's a bit ambiguous, but as we go along, you'll know why. It was an ordinary day, ordinary Saturday morning at my home in Broward County. And I decided that I've had it with the weeds choking the plants in my garden. So I got up, and by about 9 a.m., I jumped into action. Started to get the weeds out of the garden. I just finished cleaning one flower bed when, lo and behold, a UPS truck happened by. I stopped. I froze. Stood up, and saluted the brown truck. As the driver hustled to drop off the package, he hopped back into the truck, and I held my form. Eyes right, and I watched as the truck went out of sight. Then I stood at ease. Unbeknownst to me, eyes were watching the whole thing. I mean, my daughter was watching the whole thing from a window upstairs. And in about 5 minutes, the whole family descended to the front yard. They were concerned about my well-being, my mental state. They actually thought I had gone off the deep end. The studying business has finally gotten to them. I swear I was a candidate for a psychiatric evaluation and might even been Baker acted, but for the fact that I protested that I'm okay, I'm fine. After about 5 minutes, they reluctantly left. Well, the dog was still standing there looking at me funny. He didn't believe it either. And my daughter was still around. She wanted to get to the bottom of this. She said, Dad, what was that all about? Why did you salute the UPS truck? So I had to tell my story. The story began in the summer of 1986, long, long ago. I was taking Calculus 2. I was a counselor in a summer program, but I needed a job. I had the free housing, was taking classes, one class, but I needed a job. Needed a job? I thought you had a job. Well, if you're vaguely familiar with Jamaican culture, you'd realize that you can't just have one job as a Jamaican immigrant. You have to have 2, 3, 4 jobs, 5 jobs if possible. Never mind the kind of job. You just have to have multiple jobs. Otherwise, you're considered riffraff. And if you're an adult, you should own a house. No excuses. So I knew, I felt in my heart that I wasn't riffraff. I didn't want to be seen as riffraff, so I needed a job. So I started looking. I walked through the student union and posted on a poster board, says $8 an hour. UPS. Wow, $8 an hour. Minimum wage is $3.35. I gotta call these guys. So I called up. The lady told me that I would have to come in and fill the application at midnight because that's when the manager came in and they were hiring for the 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. shift. I was there at 11:50 waiting for the manager to come. 11:50 p.m. Lo and behold, the manager happens on, introduced myself, said I was there looking for the job. He gave me an application, which I filled out, and a written exam. I had to memorize every square inch of every floor space and every shelf in 3 UPS trucks. Yes, those brown trucks. I had to know which town, which street, and which street number goes where in the truck. And they have an awesome quality control system. Every mistake you make, the driver has to double back, and so it's a demerit. I passed the test with flying colors. And the guy said, congratulations, you're hired. When can you start? Well, I can start tomorrow, sir. He said, okay, I'll see you at 2:45 a.m. that is. With anticipation, I went to class. I did my tutoring for my summer program, got some sleep, set the clock, and I was there 2:40 a.m. in the morning. He was ready to show me what to do. He said, you see those 8-foot by 8-foot by 8-foot crates coming down the conveyor belt filled with packages? I said, yes, sir. He said, your color is red. They're color coded. The red cages belong to you. The object of this game, this job, is to have 3 stops each time a red crate goes by. So you hustle down, you greet the cage about 50 feet upstream, you grab a package, you read the label, you have to go into the right truck and then the right place inside of the right truck. Easy, right? Okay. It was 3 o'clock and I started to work. Mind you, he told me, oh, by the way, you get a break at 4:30. I'm sorry, 5:30. I started to work. Now you got to figure, I was about 150 pounds. You could see my ribs. I could hustle. So I started to work. I ran down the hallway. I greeted the red cage, read the package. This goes into truck number 3. I go in there, it goes into the back, left side of truck number 1, and on and on. I was working and working. I started to sweat. It's as though I came out of a swimming pool. I was fit and I was working. Gradually, that optimism, that bounce in my step began to fade. My muscles start to ache all over. My back, my arms are becoming limp. My brain hurt. The hairs on my head hurt. It was so bad. I said to myself, well, it's got to be break time now. It's got to be 5:30. Maybe that's why I'm feeling that way. But there was no clock around, so I left the line and walked out to take a peek at the clock. Alpha, Eta, Mu, Betas, I looked at the clock and nearly fell on my face. It was only 3:15. I had been working for a grand total of 15 minutes. It felt like 15 hours. I called to the gods. First, I called Allah. No answer. I called Buddha. No answer. Crickets. I called Krishna. No answer. Finally, I said, Jesus Christ. No answer. I knew I was in trouble. I started to question myself. Is there a God? Is the earth really flat? Is all this physics thing, is that really real? What's going on? I was lost. A cloud hovered my head as I marched to the cage and lumbered to the cage, and finally a voice came back. It was not Allah, it was not Buddha, it was not Krishna, and it wasn't Jesus Christ. It was the voice of my father. Michael, finish what you start. Never quit. In fact, I never heard the word quit used in my house, except for on TV. Yes, Nick, my father had ganos, if I pronounce it correctly. Okay. When he wasn't literally doing donuts with a forklift, he was making garden hoses on an assembly line. I knew I had to hang in there. And gradually, I soldiered through it. I soldiered on and on. I knew that everything I believed, I had to get rid of it. I had to reset. That was a transforming moment. This was real. I knew I couldn't quit. I had to soldier on. So I lumbered along, and gradually the pain, believe it or not, I didn't feel the pain anymore. No, I didn't take any Advil. I was just numb and working. And I felt like I was being transformed into a packaging monster. I would grab packages that know exactly where to go, which truck, and on and on. I found my strength. I soldiered on. In fact, I heard a voice say to me, what's your name again? I said, Mike. He says, it's almost 5 o'clock, 5:30. You want to go for a break? I said, yeah, I'll be there in a few. And I soldiered on some more. Fast forward. Let me share with you, my friends, that was a transforming summer. I soldiered through with that job all summer. I finished my calculus 2. I finished my counseling job and went back to school the fall of 1986. Renewed, knowing that I could do anything, knowing that and remembering that moment when my work ethic was finally cemented and I owned it. It was the moment that summer when I knew that no job was too tough. In fact, every other job after that seemed easy. Believe me. And so to this day, if I'm standing and the brown truck comes by, I stand at attention. I don't salute anymore. I maybe just a wink to the driver because it reminds me of the summer of 1986. Alpha, Eta, Mu, Betas, what is that transforming moment in your life? maybe an experience, maybe a tough time, or maybe even an encouraging word from someone. What is that positive transforming moment in your life? May I say to you that those moments are the ones that I really encourage you to cherish and to embrace, because that is the fuel on which you will run when life gets tough, as it will. When the road ahead seems all uphill, that's what will get you through those tough times. Thank you very much for having me. Back to you, Mr. President.
So I wanted to talk about an issue that I think is a very pressing issue lately, which is that of science communication in an age of misinformation. I think we're all, especially in the last year, we've been very frustrated by the level of misinformation with regards to science being spread around and people believing certain rumors or conspiracy theories or just random memes on the internet and taking it way too seriously. People tend to think very positively towards science. They don't necessarily reject it, they like it. People who are scientists or educated in science or science literate are considered to be some of the smartest people around. We've gotten to the moon because of science. We've mapped the human genome because of science. We're making at our own FIU, the biomedical engineering department, robotic arms for people to move and feel again. But historically, in times of crisis, science is vilified. For example, we don't even have to go that far back. With the 1918 pandemic, people rejected public health measures as well in that time, thinking that they were being restricted and that it was a hoax. Or more recently, and still as a pressing issue, climate change. People still reject it. I'm going to talk about three things today. One, people don't necessarily like to be told what to do. Politics strangles scientific discourse, and misinformation and conspiracy theories dissuade from proper action and even endangers people. People don't necessarily like to be told what to do. In 2016, a study published in the Annals of Internal Medicine showed that 10% of hospitalizations and 125,000 deaths were attributed to patient non-adherence. Things as simple as not taking your proper medication. Maybe we've heard, we've seen our own grandparents forget to take their medication when they should for their heart or so on. It's not necessarily out of a bad intention or disbelief, but people don't necessarily do what their doctor tells them to do. And I think this also extends to even with regards to climate change as well. People don't necessarily like to be told what to do. They sometimes recognize a problem is real or that a problem is pressing, but when told, oh, you have to do this, this, and this, they might turn away and say, that's a little too much work. I'll let other people do that and I'll just keep doing my own thing. The more pressing problem, I believe, is how politics strangles political discourse. We all know that we're all, we all have those family members that fight with each other during Thanksgiving or the holidays. They get angry with each other or they just don't listen to each other too well. Or our own friend groups. Maybe we have people from two different extremes. Political tribalism, I believe, is an existential threat to civil discourse and even scientific progress. How is it that we have here currently the Republicans typically denying climate change and the Democrats favoring it, but not so long ago, Reagan created the EPA as the way to curb climate change, and conservative Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Margaret Thatcher, was one of the first people to talk about climate change as an existential threat at the United Nations. There isn't any specific reason for why one political party or the other should look at the data and disagree or agree with it. We can all agree or disagree with the data, regardless of political affiliation. So we need to be able to be more receptive and communicate more clearly these issues. I don't want to play that video. How do I move on? All right. Recently with COVID-19, we've seen that everyone was on board at first during the pandemic, that this was a serious issue. We need to make a vaccine as soon as possible, and we need to put on our masks and take care of each other. But as things went on, the communication and the leadership ended up dividing us further. As we can see in the graph in the middle by Pew Research Center, we all agree regardless of political affiliation, that the coronavirus pandemic has a negative effect to the US economy. It's pretty close there. But there is such a stark contrast as to whether this is an actual negative effect towards our health. And that also translates over to vaccinations and the hesitancy towards being vaccinated, regardless of whether they're in the health fields or not. And we even see a stark difference with hospitalizations, and it shouldn't be that way. We should all be receptive and looking to the facts. We should all be more data driven and less susceptible to political rhetoric, because it doesn't have any bearing on what the science says. Misinformation and conspiracy theories dissuade people from proper action, and it endangers scientists as well as regular people. A lot of the social media has a big effect on this. All the Facebook posts that have been very unhelpful since the very beginning, those posts that said you need to gargle hot water with salt in order for you to not get infected. Remember when that was a thing? But it's gotten worse and worse. And now a lot of people, most people have heard that the pandemic was even made up and planned intentionally because of social media. Here we see, back when he had Twitter, one of the more powerful and influential people in the world right now, not saying that climate change was manufactured by the Chinese. How are you going to explain to him the data, the numbers, the trend line? Historically, even in other pandemics, there have been people taking advantage to sell quack medicines and preying on people's paranoia. It's natural to feel paranoid and to believe in conspiracy theories every once in a while. But we have to recognize there are people that want to take advantage of that. And that endangers people in that they're very susceptible to, for example, not taking a vaccine and just taking supplements, hoping that that'll save them, or taking silver nitrate and then turning blue and dying. And another big problem is how this has endangered not only scientists, but also healthcare workers or people trying to share this information. 1 in 3 healthcare workers has been a victim of physical or verbal abuse by patients or by colleagues or the public. And even the world's top infectious disease specialist and the head of the NIAID, Dr. Fauci, he has a security detail right now because of all the rhetoric and misinformation thrown his way, and received an envelope with white powder. Luckily, nothing happened, but when it spilled over him, he believed, well, it could be anthrax and I might die. That's pretty dangerous. So what can we do as scientists or just communicators? Maybe not all of us here are scientists right now. One of the things we can do is when we're talking to people that we know, either online or in person, friends, family members, we need to listen to them. We need to take into consideration what they're saying and not get angry. Have a friendly tone the whole time. Have them know that we're not their enemy just because we disagree with them. We need to engage and communicate from a place of understanding, reason, and a place that is evidence-based and data-driven. We need to be transparent of the uncertainties that we have. We don't know everything, and science is always changing. We need to understand not only our audience, but how that audience receives that information and how it spreads online and where it comes from. And one of the things we can do is do the sandwich rule, where you start with a fact, you conclude, in the middle, you throw in the myth that they're telling you, and you end with another fact. People tend to remember the beginning and end of a message more effectively. So for example, you can go, well, this is what we know. I understand that you're saying X, but, and then you end again with the facts that you know. And another thing is we can't be silent. We have to let our voices be heard. And I'm not trying to say that to start some revolution or anything like that, but whenever we hear something that could be dangerous or misinforming other people, we need to, hey, state our piece, state what we know. Most of us here are scientists, and if not, we are educated people in university. So we need to be active in our communication with others. This is an article that I read in preparation for this, published recently, the other day, through the NIH, Battling Misinformation Through Health Messaging. It's really good, I like it. And this is a video that I made this year about COVID-19 vaccines with some other colleagues. And one of the things that I was very happy about when we made this and we published it finally, was that we had many comments that were very positive and said, I was very skeptical about these vaccines and I wasn't going to take it, but after looking at this video and all the evidence that you presented about the safety and data and how it was made and the whole process of the quality assurance and the DSMB, I now feel confident enough that I can take it for my own protection. And I think that that was very, very rewarding, and I'm very proud that we were able to communicate effectively to make a difference in other people's lives. Nope. So this was the works cited, and that's it for me.